this is Steve Darcey with GoEngineer, and today I wanted to talk about sheet metal. So thanks to Tandy Bakes, I got a really cool little brake press. I can come down and hit. I've got a little assembly for this. And a lot of times you do want to model up your tooling just so you can see if something's going to work or not work. In this case, I got to kind of turn my die in order to use it correctly. And that's kind of one of the issues is if you don't know how to manufacture the part, then you may not design it properly. So today we're going to spend a lot of time on sheet metal parts. For the most part, for you guys that are new to this, sheet metal part is done where the thickness of the material is consistent, and you can, of course, fold it and unfold it. But before we get a little bit too crazy with that, let's just start something from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and start with just a new part file. If you guys have just started SOLIDWORKS, it may look like this. You can just start with a regular part file. I have some templates for millimeters and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to start with my part. And SOLIDWORKS straight out of the box comes with extrudes and all that stuff, sketches. If you right click, there's some little hidden gems in here. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my sheet metal toolbar. Now what that's going to do is it's going to add another little tab up here, and we have now tools for sheet metal. Now as we start to sketch and create sketches and things, some of these things will become more active as we can use them. Now I've got a lot to show you in a little bit of time, so let's get started. I'm going to call this guy Sheet Metal 02. And we're just going to start sketching on the front plane. And I'm going to start off with just a simple box. Start at the origin. Let's go ahead and make some dimensions so we know about what the size is. I want to make this guy 8 inches by 5 inches. And instead of going to my features and doing an extrude or revolve, I'm going to go to my sheet metal tools. And you'll see the only one that I have available, other than this guy, we'll talk about him later, is the base flange or tab. So when I click on this, then you'll see it automatically gives it just the thickness of whatever that sheet metal part is. And of course I can change it. I'll have some other videos and stuff for using gauge tables and stuff. For this, we're just going to use K-factor. And I'm not going to go too in-depth on this. You can go to some of our training events to learn more. So I'm just going to hit OK. And we got a consistent thickness. Now we also have some other little features in the browser tree, and I'll get to some of these a little bit later as well. But for right now, let's go ahead and make a little bend. Now you can see that I've got a lot of tools specific for sheet metal that I can start to use. So I'm going to start with the edge flange. Just pick on the edge, pull it up a little bit, click your mouse. That'll kind of set it and give you a nice little preview on what you want. Now because I made this guy 8 inches by 5 inches, I may want this to go to the inside. On the other hand, maybe I want it to go to the outside. We've got a lot of tools and buttons and features in the dialog box to give us exactly what we want. In this case, I want to go to the outside. I want to tell it the flange length is exactly 2 inches, so we can click on that. I can also do 2 edges at the same time. Now when I do that, now I got to decide on what I want to do in the corner. Okay. I can also put a custom bend allowance and a custom relief type. But for this, I'm just going to leave it the way it is. So we'll go ahead and say OK. And it creates our flanges. That's pretty nice. Clicked on 2 edges, typed in 2 inches, hit the OK checkbox. Let's go ahead and go with one more. So again, edge flange. Pull that to the outside. This one I'll make a little bit longer, make it 3 inches. And we'll say OK. If I want to put holes on there, I can. I'm just going to do a sketch on that face. Just draw some circles. I can use the hole wizard if I want. Let's go ahead and select all of those, make them equally spaced, or equally same diameter in this case. And we'll go ahead and make them 1/2 inch. Now, of course, I can dimension them to the edges if I want to. And from that to the edge of the top, I'm just going to leave them there. And the main thing I want to show you is that when we go to just a regular features like an extrude cut, I have a little secret little thing here that says link to thickness. So if I check that box, I don't have to type in what the thickness of the material is. It already knows. It's sheet metal. So I say OK. And there we go. Got my little part in there. Now we can also trim some of these little edges if I want. So let's go to sheet metal, go to corners. I just want to do a break corner. And I don't even have to zoom in. It just will automatically get any of those sharp corners that are in there. And go and put them at a 1/4 inch. And now it's going to put, I can have the option for fillets or chamfers on there. So that's pretty easy for a simple part, simple sheet metal part. So now we want to create the drawing for that. Now before I go to the drawing, maybe I want the guy to cut it, do some R&D, fold it up, see if it's going to work, see if it's going to fit. So to do that, you just hit the flatten button. It's going to flatten this guy out. It's going to give you an automatic outside extents of the part. So you can quickly select on that edge and find out what the length of that is. I'll pick on this edge here. Length is right down here in the status. And then if I want to, I can select it, right click, and go ahead and say export to DXF or DWG file. So you give it a name. In this case, I'll make a DXF. You can put the output alignment on where you want the origin at and the X and Y direction. That looks good to me. Make sure you select on sheet metal. Sometimes people will actually etch the bend lines. And if you do that, then you're also going to want the bend lines in there. So I'm going to go ahead and select on those. It'll put them on a separate layer for DWG DXF. So they can actually turn that off in their CNC software as well. So there's a preview of what it looks like. Hit the save button and I'm done. I've got a DXF or a DWG, whichever one you select, and it's out there. Now if I want to create a drawing of this, it's just as easy. So I'll hop out of my flattened state. Go ahead and make a drawing from the part or assembly. I'll just pick on a B-size landscape. Once this comes up, I'll have all my different views. So if I want the folded, then I'll just drag that out. It'll automatically go into projected view mode. We can do that. Shade that, make it look pretty. We could get all our dimensions. I'm going to go right to sheet number 2. And in here, you'll see that I also have the flat pattern. So I'll just drag and drop that in. Any bend lines that are on there will automatically be on there. If you have a whole bunch of bend lines, we have tables for that. So you can just say you do a bend table. Select on the view. I have to tell it, I just hit OK. Plop that out there. And now each of these are A, B, and C. We can go to the table to actually see what that thing looks like. Pretty simple. So again, I could put the dimensions on. We have other training videos for that. So we're going to get right back into sheet metal. So next I want to show you different ways in which we can create sheet metal parts. So I'm going to start off with this guy right here. And in this case, all I did was took a sketch, a rectangle, extruded it, and when I extruded it, I checked the little box for draft. We put 10 degrees of draft on there, and we've got that part. So what do we do with this guy? Well, you can see as we got a solid model, I've got a couple extra little buttons up here. So I'm going to say convert to sheet metal. I usually select on the face that that's going to be flat, the one that I'm going to bend around. So I'm going to pick on that. Notice that the offset is going the wrong direction. So I'm going to reverse the thickness so it goes into the part. It's a little bit harder to see. Then I want to tell it what the bent edges are. So I'm going to select on the edge, and then it's got to put a little bend radius in there and follow that on down. Now I'm going to pick on all of the tops of these. I'm a designer, and I like to make it very difficult for the manufacturing guy. So this is going to be pretty rough. Now in the inside, it also has to rip the edges. So we have a default gap that we can put in there. And everything looks pretty good. Just going to go ahead and say OK. I'll go ahead and turn off. I probably should have set this. Turn off the solid body. And there's my part. So pretty crazy little part. We'll have to maybe get some specific tooling for that. I can flatten it out. Flatten it back up. But let's keep on modeling from this point forward. Maybe I've got some outside flanges that I want in there. So again, we can do edge flange. Problem with this one is notice it's going 90 degrees up off the top. So a nice little trick is to come in here, instead of putting an angle in, select in the little box, pick on a flat face, and it's going to automatically make this parallel to that. And it puts the right angle in there. So in case here it says parallel to face. So then we could tell it how far these are. So maybe they're 1.5 inches. Want to make sure that it's flat on the bottom. Looks good. So I'll say OK. So pretty easy. Let's go ahead and do one more little fun thing. We'll do a sketch. I'm going to go ahead and create a slot. Let's do a centered slot. Just kind of put this guy out here. I want to put a dimension from the top of this. Let's make that half. And then I'm going to do something a little sneaky. I'm going to go from, let me hit escape. I'm going to go from this edge, hold down shift, pick on that little edge, and I want to keep this about a 1/2 inch away from the side wall of that thing. A couple other little things. I want to make sure that it stays centered, so I'm just going to draw a construction line. Make sure that guy is vertical. That's good. And if you drag this stuff around, you can see what's constrained, what's not constrained. So all I really need to do next is to give this a radius. I'll go ahead and say 0.25. Looks good. And I'm going to cut it. Extrude cut. Check the little box, link it to the thickness. And now we've got a little cut of a slot in there. Now I want a bunch of these coming on down. So I'm going to do a linear pattern. The direction here, let me go ahead and select on my feature. And when I do, that'll pop up my dimensions. So the direction here, I'm actually going to select on this dimension for the direction. So it's going to be normal to that edge line there. So it's going to come straight on down there. Let's go ahead and put these about a 1/2 inch. Nope, that's too small. So a little bit more. There we go. And give it a little bit of an edge there. And then I've checked the little box down here for vary sketch. Now if I don't vary the sketch, it's just going to go straight down. Of course I can flip that. But if I hit vary sketch, then you can see it's keeping this consistent 1/2 inch width across there. So we can say OK. Looks pretty cool. If I want that on the other side, it's good to take advantage of symmetry. So I'm going to mirror. Just pick on that. And there we go. Got it on both sides. So cool thing is you can make this stuff up pretty quick. You can go to the Sheet Metal tab, hit the Flatten button. Then we can export this to a DWG, DXF, make drawings of it, whatever we want to do from there. So some fun little modeling practices for that guy. Let's just keep going. So this one's going to be very similar to that, a little bit different. Got a couple little parts. In this case, I used a loft at the very beginning, but I just did 2 rectangles. Okay, then I did a little extrude on the top, did a little cut, give it a little opening where we can put some material in, and then a little boss on the bottom so I can funnel this stuff into something. So I call it a hopper. In this case, we'll do, again, convert to sheet metal. I'll start with this little side flange, and then we can come all the way down inside here. I can also bend this up on this side and then also come down this side. And the good thing about this is I get a consistent rip on that little edge. So if I'm going to weld this up, I know I'm going to weld that up. Makes it pretty easy. On this one, I do want to keep the body because I also need another sheet metal part for the back side of this thing. So go ahead and hit the Keep Body button. We'll go ahead and say OK. Then we'll do it again. Convert to sheet metal. This time, kind of same thing. I'm going to start on this side. Make sure it's going to the inside. Looks good. We'll select on our bends. Looks pretty good. And we'll say OK. Kind of same thing on this one. If you want to turn off the solid body, you'd also, if you're doing a bill of material with Weldment's cuts list, you'd want to exclude that guy or delete him, get him out of there. I'm just going to hide him for now. So you can kind of see I've got a nice little hopper. Everything's going to stay to the inside. You can also flip it to the outside if you want to make sure that you're a consistent amount of volume on there. And of course, this one has 2 sheet metal components in the same part. So it's a multi-body part. In this case, select on the face that you want to flatten, and then it will automatically turn that one off and flatten it. Okay? So again, if I want to flatten this guy, pick on him and hit flatten. And it's going to flatten him out. So pretty cool. Then I can make my drawings of this. Another way to make drawings is, of course, to use the use of configurations. And we'll get to that guy in just a bit. So another fun way to make some sheet metal parts really quick. Let's keep on going. So let's go to process plan. Occasionally, you may want to indicate to the manufacturing guy exactly how to unfold or fold this. And so, of course, I can hit the flatten button or the unflatten button, but maybe he's supposed to bend one before he bends the other because we have tooling for a left side or right side or something a little bit different. Okay, so in this case, we will use configurations. And really, that's what's happening in the background is that this flat pattern, I'm going to go and expand him out. What happens is when I hit the flatten button up here at the top, what it does is unsuppress these features. So each of these little flattened bends that it puts in here, it can actually be suppressed or unsuppressed. So I can make a configuration, one that's folded, one that's a flat pattern. And then if I want to add to this, so right click, just say add configuration. I'll just call it step 1. And then we can go to the configuration or the feature manager tree under the flat pattern. And I want to find the bend that I want to do first. And I'll unsuppress it. So maybe that's the one I want to do first. Okay. Then we can make another step. And it's going to copy this guy. Step 2. This guy's already suppressed. So next I want to bend this one up. Again, I try and make it hard for the manufacturing guy. It's going to drive me a little crazy, so let me put my little space in there. There we go. Let's make another one. Step 3. And hopefully you get the point. We're just suppressing and unsuppressing features. So there's that. And then, of course, the last one is the whole thing folded up. So that's the fourth one. So once we have configurations for this, then the cool thing is, let me go ahead and save that real quick, is to make a drawing. So make a drawing of this guy. Again, just use B-size landscape. And I'm just going to put an isometric in. So this is the folded. Now before I do this, notice that this is the configuration that we're using. So there's folded. I'm going to go ahead and put a note in here. Make sure that the view is active. And I'm very lazy. I don't like to type a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to go link this guy to a property. It's the model that this is linked to. Current drawing view. And the property name, we're going to get the SW configuration name. So notice it's automatically grabbing folded there. Say OK. Let me go ahead and I'm going to shade this. I like shaded views. Go ahead and put him way over here because that's our end result. So I'm going to select on this guy, do a Control-C for copy, pick inside the drawing view, do a Control-V for paste. Put him somewhere, pick again, Control-V. So I have a step 1, step 2, step 3. And of course, if we select on the view, change this to, maybe this needs to be flat pattern. So we'll start with that. And notice it changes the view note as well. So this one be step 1. This guy right here, it's going to be step 2. And I need to paste one more. Step 3. And then, of course, the last one is my folded view. So this is a really quick and easy way in which we can use configurations to show exactly a step-by-step process plan of how to fold up a sheet metal part. So hopefully you can use that to create some really good quick drawings. Pretty easy. All right, let's get to the next one. So let's do some gussets and louvres. I've already showed you some edge flanges, so this is pretty simple. When we have some tooling, it's really good to be able to take that tooling and save it into a design library. So in this case, I have my forming tools folder. Underneath there, I can go to louvres, and this tool, we can just kind of drag and drop this thing in. We can flip it if we want, 90 degrees. This works a lot like the hole wizard, in which we tell it what the type is first, and then we position it. So maybe I want 3 of these guys in there. And then we just hit the green check, and it puts some louvres in there. Now we can also, on the sheet metal toolbar, do some some gussets, and I always, oh, there it is. Sheet metal gusset, so we'll select on that guy. He's always hiding from me. So select on the two faces. You'll notice it's putting a little gusset in there. And this is usually a secondary operation. So we've already made our bend, we've made another bend, and this is actually forming the material around this. So it's and that's kind of the same thing with these guys too. So we have a lot of tools and buttons for doing the width, putting draft on it. I'm just going to go and accept it. So you see what it looks like. And kind of what happens is these are secondary processes. So when we flatten this guy out, you may or may not want to see what these things look like. And so we do have some tools. If you go to your sheet metal document parameters here, you can see what do you want on the flat pattern. Do you want to show the tool form, or do you want to just show the flatter, or do you want the tool centers? You know, we have a lot of options for what you want to see on that thing. So pretty cool stuff. Usually things that you don't think you can flatten, you can. Let's go ahead and do one more. There's a cool little emboss. Go ahead and drag that guy on there. And I'll just hit the OK checkbox. So any type of embossed features, we can do those as well. And again, put that tooling into a library so you can just simply drag and drop. We fully support configurations. So if you wanted to pick different sizes of embosses or louvers, then we can do that. So keep them in a centralized library, keeps them fast. Couple more. This is a really good tool, and it kind of depends on your process on how you want to do something. Say, for instance, I need a circle going into the bend of this thing. Well, we've been playing for the most part with flatten, but there's two other little options for unfold and fold. So the way this works is I need to temporarily unfold this. So I pick on my fixed face. I want to unfold this bend and this bend. Say OK. And it temporarily flattens this guy out. So now what it allows me to do is I want to create a sketch. Just draw a little circle here. Looks good. Then from here I want to do a cut. We also do have the cut on the sheet metal toolbar. So extrude cut, link to thickness, say OK. And there, that looks pretty good. And then, so this is if I actually want to cut it with a pure circle. And then I'm going to bend it back. And when I bend it, I need to fold it back. So I'm going to use the fold command. I can select on the individual bends, or I can say collect all the bends. It's going to grab all those. Say OK, and it folds them back up. So that's kind of the cool thing, is usually you can't unfold that. You have to do it in a correct process. But in this case, we can temporarily do it, make that cut, and go to town. Now this gives me a little weird cut. Now some people will say, okay, well I want to put a pipe in there. Well, that's not really circular. So how do we make something circular? So I'm going to play with some planes real quick. So I'm going to put a plane right here on this face, and then I'm going to select on the edge. And I want this to be at 45 degrees. Let me flip that. So that looks pretty good. Now if I want to create a plane off of that, and this one, let's just do 5 millimeters. I just want to get it kind of off of that little edge there. So we'll say OK. We'll hide our first one, hit the little eyeball there, and we'll do a new sketch on that one. So this is in the case I want to put a circle. I got a piece of pipe. Let's go and dimension it for fun. 16 millimeters. We can also dimension from edges if we want. Good enough. And I wanted them pretty much in the center there. All right. So in this case, when I extrude cut, I can't really do link to thickness there, right? I've got to go actually through the part. Now, this is something that's only in 2018. So let me not link it to the thickness there. And now I should be able to drag this on down. So I want to make sure it goes all the way through the part. Looks good. And that will give me a pure circle. So if I want to weld a pipe into this little corner here, then this is pretty much the way to do it. All right. The other checkbox that I have here, again, this is for 2018, is optimize geometry. So I'm going to hit the OK checkbox. And what it's going to do, I'm going to hide my plane temporarily, is I'm going to use that same sketch and do a quick extrude. just so you can kind of see what's going on here. So let me drag that on through. So again, I got a pipe that's going through here, and look at the way that it cut this. It cut this on the side correctly, and then it's also normal to this face. You can kind of see it, that pipe can fit through there, and it's giving me the cut to the outside. Same thing down here, it's actually flipping, it's going down, and it's the cut to the outside on the bottom side, normal to this face. So that's a pretty crazy little cut that it has to do. And of course, it's easy to do in SOLIDWORKS, we just got to check the box. All right, so let's go ahead and got our sketch, got him turned off. And again, if I want to circle, that's the way I want to do it. If I want to unbend it, put a circle through there and then bend it back up, then I can do it in that procedure. So 2 quick and easy ways in which we can create circles across bends. Let's keep moving. So let's do a swept flange. On this one, it's a little tricky. Sheet metal toolbar. This didn't come straight out of the box. I'll show you how to customize this in just a bit. But in this case, I have 2 sketches. I have this little weird zigzaggy guy with 3 lines. And then I have another sketch. I just did a line, arc, a line, arc, and a line. All right, so let's go have some fun with this. Do swept flange, pick on the profile, that guy. Pick on the path, that guy. I'm going to do a K factor, so that's good. I think everything else looks all right. And we do want to tell it what the thickness is. In this case, I'm just going to use 1 millimeter. And the bend radius is always the inside of the bend. So in this case, it's 1 millimeters to the inside. On this guy, it's going 1 millimeters to the inside on that. So it looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and say OK. So not something you typically, this is kind of also a 2-step process. Is first you're going to have the extruded part, and then you're going to bend this thing around a mandrel. You're going to have a lot of thinning and stuff that's happening here. But we can flatten this guy out. And when we flatten him, we not only get our bend lines for the original extruded shape, but then we also get them for this formed part of the shape as well. So pretty crazy. If you're doing ducting or something like that, this is a really good tool for doing that. So swept flange. Get a little crazier. Let's go to a cone. This one is, I'm going a little old school. So some of you old guys, you kind of like this process. Just did a circle, extruded it up with some draft. Did the shell command. And then I did a little cut extrude. So I used a little sketch, and the sketch is, I did it normal to the outside of this thing. So if I pick on this inside on the top or the bottom, it's still normal. I got a 90-degree cut on that guy right there. Okay, so pretty simple. That way I've got this cut. If I got it cut, then I can unfold it. Let's go ahead and update that. Let's go to sheet metal. In this case, we're going to use this thing called insert bends. This is what we used to use all the time. This one I'm just going to select on the inside edge there. Everything looks pretty good. Let me make sure that I have everything set. We'll go ahead and say OK. And with that, we get this old school method of flatten bends and process bends. And this is where a lot of the configurations for suppressing or unsuppressing can come in play. But I can also use, again, flatten and unflatten. So that's kind of the cool thing is when this guy flattens out, there he is. I can also use some crazy things if I want to say unfold. Again, I'll try and select on that little edge. The bend to unfold is going to be that. Say OK. We can do a little sketch. Create some circles. And that's good enough. We'll go ahead and cut it. Link it to thickness again. So it only goes through that. And then we can pull the bends back up. So we'll go to say fold. Just say collect all bends. And then it folds it back up. So anyway, some kind of cool ways in which we can flatten this guy out and unflatten him. This is a new one for 2018. So you guys that don't have 2018, sorry about that. Upgrade and you'll get this one. This is called Tab and Slot. What it does is it makes it really easy to where I can select on an edge. When I do, I need to pick on the bottom face that it's going to end at. And then what it's going to do is put some little tabs in there. It's going to automatically connect it. This is for multi-body parts. This also works in assemblies with multiple sheet metal components if they're mated together. So it puts the little tab in there on one side. And then not only that, but it also puts the cut in there on the inside of this thing. So we'll go ahead and say OK. You'll kind of see what it does. There's my little tab. I've added the little chamfers in there. And if we zoom in there really good, you'll see that I have a little offset all the way around this thing. So in this case, I think I set it to 0.5 millimeter. So the reason why we use these a lot of times is that allows the guy to put it in, position it. In this case, it'd be hard to get an actual drawing and put that on there. But if I put some tabs and some slots in there, now the guy can go in there and he can just weld this guy up and it's stuck in place. So tab and slot is pretty easy. It's just one feature. You go in and edit that guy and create these things all day long. All right, this one's a little bit tricky. This was guy said that you couldn't do it, so I tried to prove him wrong. This is pretty much done with configurations, and you can do some pretty crazy stuff to where this is the bent up model. Takes it a second to regen. There we go. And you can see I've also got some little lofted components in here. So some pretty crazy looking stuff. But for the most part, we've got the flat pattern. This one was done a little bit different. I actually started out with the flat sheet metal part. The sheet metal also had, let me get to that sketch, some of the bend lines and stuff on there. So in this case, what I did is a sketched bend. So I just created a line and then bent it up along that line. And you'll kind of see that this is pretty crazy. Comes in like that. Have to kind of bend it again on the back side. Bend it up, over, up, over. So I got a bunch of little crazy bends in there. Then almost 180 degree there. Bends it up just a little bit. I've got a little bit of an angle there, a little bit of an angle there, because that's where these big bends come in. So there's 3 of them. So it's kind of pulled up on that edge. And again, depending on what the tooling you have will depend on, you know, what this thing is actually going to look like. All right, then I had to actually model in these little slots. And so I kind of faked it on these. Had to actually do some cuttings, a little bit of surface work. And then once I created them, then modeled them up, and that's what I get. And that's what the sheet metal part actually looks like when we're completely done. Some pretty crazy stuff. So main thing, we can pretty much model up anything, and we can almost pretty much flatten anything. All right, one more. Some more food for thought. Now this, I've showed you everything is in SOLIDWORKS Standard, so everybody has that. This tool came in, we used to sell it for about a $5,000 package. And I'm going to go ahead and search for it so you can kind of see how this works. It's called Surface Flatten. I'm just going to drag and drop it on there. This is only for people that have SOLIDWORKS Premium. So if you have SOLIDWORKS Standard or SOLIDWORKS Professional, you're not going to have this button. And for the most part, what it does is take surfaces. So we're going to select on the surfaces that we want to flatten out. So in this case, I got some weird lofted shapes and stuff like that. So if you're having to unfold stickers or something, then this works out pretty good. You do have to select a point that we're going to unfold about. So I'm going to pick on this little point here. And then what it's going to do is it's going to put a whole bunch of little lines across the surfaces, and then it's going to flatten out those lines to where I have a completely flat shape. Now the thing is, when you do that, when you flatten this guy out, and again, he is flat, so we can export that to a DXF or DWG if we want to. But something you may want to look at, let me right click on that again, is look at the deformation plot. Whenever I'm expanding this thing or contracting it, you'll actually see little areas where I'm stretching it or compressing this thing. And occasionally you may want to put little lines in there or little cuts in there to kind of help smooth that out. Or put little holes in there. And so you can kind of see where the maximum amount of stretch or compression is and make your recommendations off of that. So that's pretty cool because we can, I'm going to say, almost flatten anything. So fabric, garments, things like that, you model them up, you can flatten them out. But you do have to use SOLIDWORKS Premium. So I wanted to do this pretty quick. Wanted to give you some good little heads up on simple parts to very complex parts with sheet metal and SOLIDWORKS. So I'm Steve Darcey. Thanks for watching, and use GoEngineer. Thanks.